This is the Tactical Muffin Top. Muffin Top, Muffin Top. I'm a little bit late. I just had a issue putting the boy down to bed, but we are here now. Hashtag parent life, right? Dropping my Discord saying we are live because YouTube doesn't like to tell everybody every time. I had a lot of my buddies got their IGs and their YouTube schwacked and deleted today, so YouTube must be going through another purge of getting rid of people that they don't like in their opposition and ways, right? So that's what's up. Whoops. I typed the wrong thing in the Discord. My bad. We currently have 0 people watching, so that's cool. We are going to do a book chat, trying to finish up what's left of this here 1 second after book. So that's just going to be what it is, and if some homies hop in here along the way, that'll be great. We do have 2 people watching. What's up, Scott Hummer? What's up, brother? George, how you doing, bro? We are running the book chat 1 second after. This is episode 6. I'm trying to get this book finished up because I actually have a lot of topics that I have written down that I want to talk about. So without further ado, I think we just run it, right? Unless you guys want to talk about anything. If you have questions, concerns, things that you want talked about, drop them in the comments if they tickle our interest. If anybody else hops in the panel, we will discuss them. So we're going to let it run. I'm trying to knock this book out so we can get back to kind of more up-to-date news chats and things like that. So the book chats are fun. They are very thought-inducing, which is what I like. And they're also a good way, especially if nobody has hit up these books or whatever, bring them to light. And every single time I listen to these books, and if you check out my audiobook section in my Discord, I've listened to all the books. Every single time I listen to a book, I take something new from it, or I'm thinking a different way, and I have learned. And I'm like, man, if they would have done this, it would have helped, whatever. Like, it helps me prep. When you get the extracurricular thinking bone going in your body, it really helps. Yeah, thank you, George Cortez. I like the video on water treatment. I have like 20 more. Coldfoot's going to help me string together kind of like a condensed video of them, and then I'm going to release a few, maybe 4 or 5 videos tops of them. But yeah, I did like 20 videos on it. It was awesome. We tested the tap water, my fridge filter. We tested the Berkey and the Phoenix Gravity, and we tested a 0 water filter that you can buy at like Walmart. So anybody can get this. And in my opinion, you'd be better off just rocking a Justin B. What's up, brother?
What up, man?
Not much, man. Just talking through and talking to the homies that are dropping comments in the chat. I don't know if you caught my water video yet, but
I saw what I think is part 1 of it.
Oh yeah,
I'm saving the rest for the ride.
Yeah, I got about 20 videos. I don't know if all of them are going to make them to YouTube. I think we're going to edit some into a video, but yeah, we tested water for like 4 hours. So,
oh shit,
yeah, makes me not want to drink any city water ever again. To tell you the truth, I think I was saying before I let you in here, I think honestly the best thing would be is get 2 5-gallon buckets and whatever filters you care about, because they're pretty dang close. If I'm being honest, which is nice. That's what I wanted to know is, hey, because like Berkey's kind of up there and Phoenix is kind of newer and up and coming. Their filters are pretty dang similar, man. And if you can get a hold of either one, I know Berkey had an issue getting filters there for a while. Stack the filters, make you a 5-gallon bucket one, log your gallons, and I think you'd be good.
That's what I was telling homeboy in the Discord was, a lot of people, they buy the system, then the filters. I did mine backwards. I bought filters when they were on sale, and then I built my system around it, because that's the most, that's what you want to fuck out of is your filters. And
right, and that's what does the job, right?
Before I got the Undersync RO system, before I spent the freaking the $500-600 on the Undersync RO system, it's like freaking you got to filter that trash, man. They don't give a fuck about us.
Yep. I agree. So we're gonna rock the book. I'm trying to knock it out. Hopefully tonight. We'll see. So I know sometimes it's boring for us, the guests and my homies, chilling here waiting. But like, unless something pops up that's like super catching my attention at the time that I want to address quickly, I kind of just wait till the end of the stream, and then we'll BS for half hour to an hour, kind of how it's been going, and kind of
Yep,
bounce
and
some
I'm
stuff
free
off each other.
for the first show. That sounds good. I'll be here.
Heck yeah, let's run it. All right, y'all. If you got any questions, comments, concerns, drop them in the comments. Drop them in the comments. Drop them in the comments. Without further ado, we are going to rock this book.
And to defend this place against a serious attack right now and stop thinking about mob control or a few desperados trying to sneak in. If they have any ex-military types at all with them, they'll do a probe first, then hit us hard. We got to keep an eye on our back doors, the railroad tunnel, and the old back roads down to Old Fort. We're no longer dealing with refugees. We'll be facing an army as ruthless as anything in history. Washington nodded in agreement. I think I'll go home, John said. The two shook hands, and John went back up the slope by the bridge. He nodded to Brett, concealed in the grass. Fran got a bit jumpy there. Glad she didn't shoot that woman. Same here. Though John wondered if a bullet in her head might have been an act of mercy. He got in the Edsel and headed for home. As he pulled into the drive, the two fools, Ginger and Zack, came off the deck to greet him. He knelt down to pet both and found himself hugging them. Daddy! It was Jennifer, Pat with her. Everything okay? Sure, Daddy. He looked at Jennifer closely. She had lost a few pounds. At every meal, Jen had been pushing as much food into her as possible, meat and vegetables, which right now were still boiled dandelions. He looked up at the orchard. If only the trees were peach trees. In another several weeks they could start to gather the peaches. The apples were growing, but far too slow, it seemed. He had never had any real interest in the 8 trees, other than their beauty in the spring. The apples were rather sour in the fall, and they usually just left the fruit there to drop, delighted when the apples lured in bears to feed on them. She had to eat a little chocolate earlier, Pat said. Blood sugar went down. Snitch, Jennifer snapped. I promised your dad I'd keep an eye on you. I can take care of myself. He hugged both of them, the two arguing as he went into the house. Jen was half asleep, book laid across her chest, an old book on the Civil War. Where's Elizabeth? Oh, she and Ben went out for a walk, Jen said, and sat up, rubbing her eyes. They're out there walking a lot these days, John said. Well, son-in-law, you better sit down. Why? I think you need to talk to the two of them. About what? Sex? Getting pregnant? Oh, damn, Jen, not now, not today. I don't even want to think about it in relationship to her. Few fathers do. But frankly, my son-in-law, I think your 16-year-old daughter is now, how shall we say, a woman. Jesus, don't even talk to me about this now. Tyler and I had you and Mary figured out rather quickly. He blushed. Jen had never said that before, and he looked over at her. Almost to the day, I bet. At least I did. Tyler, like any dad, went totally blind to reality. And John, I see it in your daughter now. Jen, not now, he sighed. There's so damn much else going on. Jen nodded slowly. And you don't want to face this issue. Okay, but you better face up to it, John. Those two are scared. Don't see much of a future ahead. The old restraints fall away. I'm old enough to remember the Second World War. It was the same then. 18-year-old kids who knew each other just a couple days or weeks would figure what the hell, and either marry on the spot or have to get married within a few months. Our greatest generation stuff tends to make us forget just how young and scared they were back then. So face up to the reality, dear son-in-law. You're the history professor. You know what happens inside kids when there's a war on. Too much was happening today. He stood up, peeked into Jennifer's room. She and Pat were playing a game with Jennifer's Pokemon cards. Her skin color looked off, a bit yellowish, pale. Dear God, but one plane load of supplies into Asheville, but one, and my worst worry is gone. Would you talk to her? He asked, looking back at Jen. Coward. And yes, I already have. But I think you, as a dad, better talk to both of them as well. Okay, later, he said, a bit too quickly. Looking at Zach and Ginger, John went to the gun cabinet. He pulled out the 20 gauge and headed out the door, the two dogs slowly trotting along behind him, knowing that today there just might be some food if their master and provider got lucky. Chapter 9. Day 63. He awoke to the dogs barking and instantly knew someone was in the house. They had drilled the plan after the murder of the Connors last week, their home at the top of the road, all four of them, parents, two kids, the house then ransacked from one end to the other for whatever scraps of food they might have. He didn't hesitate, shotgun up as he stepped out of the office, crouching low. The two dogs were barking madly, snarling, and then he heard the crack of a gun and a high-pitched, yelping scream. He stepped into the living room. The back door into the kitchen was wide open. Two men. At least it looked like two men. So this was the moment. And he did it without hesitation. The first blast nearly decapitated the man by the door. The second turned. One shot fired wild, and the second blast caught that one in the guts, flinging him back against the kitchen counter. The girls had been drilled. If there was an intruder, they were supposed to get on the floor behind the bed. The waterbed where they now slept together was an excellent barrier. After several seconds, Elizabeth started screaming, "Daddy!" "Stay put!" Crouched down low, he came around the turn into the kitchen. The one man was definitely dead. Even in the dark moonlight, John could see that. The other whimpering, kicking spasmodically. By his side was Zach, crying pitifully, Ginger with hackles raised, snarling at the wounded man. There could be someone outside, John realized. But first he crawled over to the wounded man, grabbed his pistol, which was on the floor, a .22 revolver from the feel of it, and stuck it into his belt. The other man didn't have a gun, just a machete, and John took that with his free hand. He headed back to the wide-open door, was about to step out, then thought twice, doubling back through the house, coming in low to first Jennifer's room and then Elizabeth's, to make sure there wasn't a third intruder. Past his old bedroom, he looked in for a second. "I'm all right. Now don't move," he hissed. "Elizabeth, you have your gun." "Yes, Daddy," and her voice was trembling. "If I come back to this room, I'll call out first. If anyone else comes through, you shoot and don't hesitate." "Yes, Daddy." Back out through his office, and then the front door, which he slipped open, circling back around the house. No one else. He slipped through the rear door into the kitchen and touched the basement door. It was still locked. Then once more down low, sweeping Jennifer's and Elizabeth's rooms yet again, nervously popping the closet doors open, both rooms still empty. He went back into the kitchen. "Jen, light a candle and get out here." A minute later, the flickering light illuminated the kitchen. Jen recoiled at the sight of the first man, face gone. The second was crying louder now, curled up. And then there was Zach. John went over to his old buddy, his friend of so many years, who had saved their lives with his warning. He was shot in the top of the back, just behind the shoulder blades. "Oh, God, Zach," John sighed. And like so many dogs, so desperately hurt, Zach licked John's hand, as if by doing so he'd feel better. John looked over at Jen, wide-eyed. "You got to help me." It was the wounded man. "Please help me." John actually felt stunned with how quickly he reacted. The Glock he kept strapped to his side even when he slept was out, round already chambered, John? It was Jen. He squeezed the trigger. The discharge of the 9mm round, an explosion that set Elizabeth and Jennifer to screaming again. "It's all right," John shouted. "It's all right, girls, but stay put." John looked at Jen, who'd stood stock still, horrified. I'd have shot him in town if he'd lived that long. John had executed 5 in the last week. 2 of them locals, who had stolen a pig, killed it, and were gorging themselves up in a mountain hollow when finally tracked down. The 2 pathetic fools never fully realizing that hungry men could now smell meat cooking from half a mile away. The other 3 caught raiding a house just like the 2 on the floor now. "Jen, you'll have to help me drag them outside. I don't want the girls to see this mess." Zach's whimpers made John turn around. Ginger was lying by Zach's side, licking her old friend. John filled up. The execution-style killing had bothered him not in the least. Washington Parker was right. After the first one, it starts to get easier, and in this case, the men invading his home, threatening his girls, it didn't bother John in the slightest. It was Zach, though. Zach and Ginger were down to skin and bones, ribs showing through their once sleek coats. Regardless of the ban on letting dogs run wild, John had let them out to forage since their old stomping grounds had been up in the woods that became Pisgah National Forest, not 100 yards away. Though he worried that others out hunting would bag them, so far they had been lucky. He knelt down by Zach's side. Zach lifted his head and again licked John. "Thank you, old friend," John sighed. "Thank you for everything." "Do you want me to do it?" Jen whispered. Startled, he looked up at her. "No, he was our dog. Mary's and mine." He pulled out the .22 taken from the dead man, cocked it, and put it behind Zach's ear. Ginger stood up, sensing something, whimpering loudly now. And John couldn't do it, dissolving into tears. "I'll take care of him," Jen whispered. "You go outside. Take Ginger with you. You don't want her to see it either. Now go on." Jen left the room and was back seconds later with the last pack of cigarettes and the bottle of scotch that held a final precious ounce. "Girls, we're safe, but you are to stay in your room on the floor," Jen shouted. John looked at Zach and felt at that moment like a coward, completely unmanned. He knelt down and kissed Zach on the forehead. He was bloody, panting hard. He stood back up and then went outside, dragging Ginger by the collar, and let her loose. He lit the cigarette and uncorked the bottle. There, Zach," he could hear Jen in the kitchen. "Tell Tyler I love him. You remember our dog Lady? It's time to play with her now." The muffled crack of the pistol had John leaning over the deck railing, crying, Ginger whimpering and nuzzling against his legs. There was such a surreal sense of disconnect. I just killed 2 men, executing one without a second's hesitation. But this? Sobbing over a dog? Jen came out the door a moment later, bearing Zach, wrapped in a blanket. "He's so light," she said softly. "He's better off now." "I'll bury him once it gets light," John said. "No, John." "What?" And then he realized. No, not Zach. No, he couldn't. I'd vomit. The girls, too. We can't. "Take him down to the Robinsons. It won't be the same for them. Besides, poor Patty is starving to death." "They're on rations. Any food hoarding, by getting something additional, they lose their cards. According to the law, we can eat him, but they can't. I'm supposed to turn him in to the communal food supply." "Damn it, John. You are so cold-blooded logical in some ways and an idiot in other ways. Take him down to the Robinsons now. They can trade us something for him later." John finally nodded. She handed Zach's body to him. "I'll get Lee to help with the bodies. You keep the girls out of the living room and kitchen. You'll tell them? John asked. She nodded. John slowly walked over to the car. Don't move another goddamn inch, a voice hissed in the darkness. He froze, cursing himself as an idiot. There had been a third man, maybe a fourth or fifth. John prepared to drop Zach, shout a warning before they got him, give Jen and Elizabeth time to be ready. John? That you? And now he recognized the voice. It was Lee Robinson. Jesus, Lee, yeah, it's me. I heard shots. Came up to help. Thanks, Lee. He stepped out of the shadows and drew closer. John, what are you carrying? Oh, Jesus, not one of the dogs. Zach, if he and Ginger hadn't have warned us, they'd have had us, 2 of them. I killed both. Zach got shot by one of the bastards. I just heard a shot a minute ago. I couldn't do it, John admitted, and he found himself clutching Zach tighter. What a piece of shit. Jen had to do it. It's okay, John. It's okay. And Lee's arm was around John's shoulder. Southerners, he thought. Southerners and their dogs. They understand. He could feel Lee shaking a bit. He had been partial to Zach as well, their old dog Max, a buddy. Max had disappeared a week ago, most likely poached while wandering in the woods, and Lee was absolutely distraught over him. John gained control, and the 2 stood there looking at Zach, and each knew what the other was thinking. Take him, Lee, was all John could say. John, not in a million years did I ever think we'd come to this. John handed the body over. I'll take him down to Mona. She'll be respectful as she... He started to choke up as well and couldn't speak for a moment. Thank you. I was getting frantic over Patty. The damn rations just aren't enough. John, Zach saved her life, too. John started his drive down to town several hours later. The bodies of the 2 robbers stretched out on the porch as he pulled away from the house. Bartlett's meat wagon, as they now sardonically called it, the old VW bus, could be sent up later to get them. John felt so cold about their deaths that for a moment he dwelled on the thought that 2 extra rations would now be spent, the reward for the digging of a grave in the golf course cemetery. There were 1,500 graves there now, another 500 filling the Swannanoa Christian School's soccer field. Keller had been right. The dying time was now upon them. Deaths from starvation were soaring. Yesterday there had been close to 100, mostly the elderly still, and then parents. As a historian, John knew that was the pattern, though a casual observer, an academic sitting in an armchair calculating such things, would have figured the children next. But what parent would eat while their child starved? The ration lines, now 5 of them scattered around the 2 communities, had nearly 90% of the surviving population showing up for 1 distribution a day of soup and either a biscuit or a piece of bread. That was another state secret. The bakery, closely guarded at a local pizza shop where wood heat had been rigged in, was now mixing in sawdust to give the bread bulk, to fill stomachs. It was the same as Leningrad, and actually that had been the inspiration for John to suggest it. So the parents, many of them working to get an extra ration, were bringing the food home to their children, then dying off. And once both parents were gone, it was hoped that neighbors or kin would take the orphans in. Charlie and Tom had been forced to issue strict orders that personnel receiving extra rations were to eat them on site when the rations were issued, but even so, they'd stash a biscuit in a pocket. Some even rigged up plastic liners in their pockets to pour the soup into when they thought no one was watching, then slowly walked home, where 2, 3, 4 hungry kids might be waiting. And yet, ironically, at the same time, at least according to Voice of America, there were signs that some recovery was going on, down along the coast. The federal government was reconvened, functioning aboard the carrier Abraham Lincoln, and martial law was still in effect. There were reports that the corn and wheat harvest of the Midwest would be brought in, and train lines reopened to move the bulk goods. Headquarters for the Southeast Emergency Government had been established in Charleston, and daily reports now issued about the progress of rebuilding, even a claim that a nuclear power plant in Georgia had been brought back online. But it seemed like any progress being made was moving along the coast or slowly edging towards Atlanta. He wondered if someone up the command chain had decided to triage off upper South Carolina and western North Carolina. There had been overflights, though. Fighters several times, a C-17 transport, and Asheville finally admitted that replacement parts for generators for the hospital had been airlifted in. Asheville was playing its cards close. The phone line that Black Mountain had started had been run into the county office in Asheville, but the communications were rather one-sided, as if the director there resented the showdown over refugees versus water supply. The thought that some kind of medical supplies had been lifted into Asheville had made John wild, Washington having to nearly physically restrain him from driving straight there and demanding some fresh insulin. He had personally telephoned Burns, who still was running Asheville, and begged for any information on insulin. And Burns flatly announced none had come in, and even if it had, he would not release any outside of the town no matter what. Insulin. John was obsessed with it. 2 days ago, Jennifer's blood sugar was up. She had taken an injection, and it was still up. He had finally gone for Michaela, and she carefully examined Jennifer, then took him aside. The 3 remaining bottles. They might have spoiled, was all Michaela would say. It had finally taken 3 times the normal dose to bring Jennifer's level back down. Her time had been cut by 2/3. And help, if it was indeed help, was still as far away as the far side of the moon. Of the other diabetics in the town, over half were dead, the others dropping off fast. He turned off the motor of his car, sat back, and lit another cigarette, the 6th of the day. The hell with it, and the counting out. He sat there, smoked, looking at the interstate, cars still stalled where they had died over 2 months ago. Somehow we've all been playing a game of reality avoidance with ourselves, even on day 1, he realized. Anyone with even the remotest understanding of EMP and the threat to the nation should have been going insane before it hit. During World War II, the entire nation had been mobilized. All the talk of loose lips sinking ships, the scrap drives, the guards on railroad bridges in Iowa. Much of it was absurd when the threat was finally understood long after the war was over. There were no legions of spies and saboteurs in America, and the few who were in place or attempted to infiltrate were caught within days by the FBI. There was a threat, and though remote, it was at least acted on back then. But this time, the threat was 100 times worse, and they did nothing, absolutely nothing. Angrily, he stubbed out the cigarette and lit another. If everyone had been educated to it the same way civil defense had once been in the curriculum of every school back in the 1940s and 1950s, if people knew the simple things to do on day 1, Charlie already trained to react to an EMP, mobilize his forces, and react quickly. If they had but a few simple provisions stocked away, the same way anyone who lives in hurricane or tornado country does, would they be in this mess? The crime, the real crime, was those who truly knew the level of threat doing nothing to prepare or prevent it. Bitterly, he wondered if they were suffering as the rest of the nation now suffered, or were they safely hidden away, the special bunkers for Congress, the administration, where food, water, and medicine for years were waiting for them, and their families. The thought of it filled him with rage. He knew what he would do if he could but go there now, show them Jennifer, and then do what he wished he could do to them. And he could see his own avoidance of it all since that first day, even as he did scramble to at least get insulin. Food, Bulk food, just a 50-pound bag of rice or flour, shoes, batteries, an additional test kit for Jennifer. Damn it, even birth control for Elizabeth. Dog food, a water filter so they didn't have to boil what they now pulled out of the swamp green pool. I should have had those on hand. It was over 2 months later, and people in his small North Carolina town were dying of starvation. I pretty well understood it on day one, and yet I avoided the worst of it ever since, he thought. Doc Keller had alluded to it in their meeting of nearly a month ago when the decision was made to reduce rations for most of the populace, but we did not fully face the horrible realities of it. America, the breadbasket of the world, which could feed 1 billion people without even breaking a sweat, was dying now of starvation. The two frequencies of Voice of America were talking daily about the first harvests coming in from the southern Midwest, of cattle being driven, and it all sounded to him like the old Chinese and Soviet broadcasts of the Cold War, when they boasted daily about their great strides even while people lived in squalor and indeed did die of starvation. The food was there, but it would never get here, not to this place, not now. That meant that over 20% of the town was dead, and upwards of half would die in another 30 days, while food by the millions of tons rotted because they still had no means of moving it in bulk to where it was needed most. The medicines. Yes, they were out there someplace. Some stockpiles overseas, perhaps. But the factories that made them were in cities, and the cities had no power, or perhaps a few places here and there, and the people who worked in the factories were hunkered down or scattered refugees, perhaps some of the very people now lying dead below the barrier. And even if the factory did suddenly turn on, the insulin was processed from genetically altered bacteria in labs. But the labs, maybe in New York or Arizona, were 1,000 miles away. The bottles it was then loaded into? Perhaps made in Mexico, and trucked to the lab 1,000 miles away, and then loaded back aboard climate-controlled trucks and taken to airports and priority shipped in containers specially designed, those containers perhaps made in Mississippi. And so it went. IV bags. Nearly all the IV bags in America were made in just a few places. Million a day, and they were boxed in sterile environments and then shipped to other factories that filled them with blood drawn perhaps 1,000 miles away, or various solutions mixed in Oregon and shipped to Texas, there to meet the bags to be filled. And so much from overseas that were in container ships offloaded by diesel-electric-powered cranes, then loaded into trucks. Perhaps the plastic to make the IV bag first emerging from the ground as oil in Kuwait, and from there to Texas to be cracked, and the appropriate chemicals siphoned off and shipped to Louisiana to be turned into plastics, some of them for plastic bags to come to Asheville. Such a vast, intricate, beautiful, profoundly complex web, the most complex in history, and all along a few enemies whom Americans had for years ignored, and then in one day had come to hate. And that hate had slowly changed, as it does with Americans, to remoteness, disdain, and a smug sense of ultimate victory, perhaps even victory by the simple fact that they made a wish that the enemies were no longer there. For ultimately, what did 9/11 do in the coldest sense? It killed 3,000. Did the economy collapse the next day? Did John's Jennifer miss an insulin shot? Did the workers in a factory that made insulin scatter in panic on 9/11? No. And in spite of outrage, people's tears of empathy, unless it was a friend or one of their own blood lost that day, their world really did not change, other than the annoyance of getting through an airport. The web of our society, John thought, was like the beautiful spider webs he'd find as a boy in the back lot after dawn on summer days, dew making them visible. Vast, beautiful, intricate things. And at the single touch of a match, the web just collapsed, and all that was left for the spider to do, if it survived that day, was to rebuild the web entirely from scratch. And our enemies knew that, and planned for it, and succeeded. He tossed the second butt out the window, lit another, and drove into town to report the attack on his house and get Jim to bring up the meat wagon. The soup line at the elementary school was already forming up, even though distribution of the day's rations wasn't until noon. The carcass of a hog was trussed up to a tree, actually barely a suckling, already stripped down to the bones, which would be tossed into the pot as well. The people online were skeletal, their weight really falling away now. Many could barely shuffle along. Kids were beginning to have bloated stomachs. Out along the curb, half a dozen bodies lay, dragged out for the meat wagon, no longer even given the dignity of a sheet to cover them. A man, 3 kids, most likely their parents dead and no one to truly care for them, and a woman, obviously a suicide, with her wrists slashed open. It made John think of the woman on the road. Carol, that was her name. Most likely dead by suicide long ago. The refugee center was starting to empty out, people beginning to move into the homes of locals who had died. In the short drive, he could sense the collapse setting in. The bodies in front of the elementary school, the fact of just how dusty and litter-strewn the streets were. Without the usual maintenance, storm drains had plugged up with debris. Several trees had dropped and were then cut back just enough to let a single vehicle through. One of the beautiful towering pines in front of the elementary school had collapsed across the road, smashing in the front porch diner across the street. Enough of the tree had been cut away to clear the road for traffic. The rest just left in place. Nothing had been done to repair the diner's crushed roof. The inside now left open to the elements, the building itself broken into repeatedly by scavengers who were now willing to scrape the grease out of the traps as food. That broke his heart every time he drove past it. The diner had been his usual stop on many a morning long ago. Mary would have freaked on his breakfast of bacon, eggs, and hash browns, but he so loved the place. The owner, a man he truly respected, hard-working, starting from a hole in the wall a block away to create a diner that was the place in Black Mountain for breakfast. Truckers, construction workers, shop owners, and at least one professor type. How many mornings had John spent there, after dropping the kids off at school, for a great meal, a cigarette, the usual banter, playing one of the games the owner carved out of wood, trick puzzles, and then going on to his late morning lecture. What a world we once had, he sighed. The parking lot of the bank at the next corner was becoming weed-choked, though that was being held back a bit by children from the refugee center plucking out any dandelions they saw and eating them. The bank had been one of the last of an old but dead breed, locally owned, the owner's Land Rover still parked out front, covered in dust and dried mud. John turned past Hamid's store. A few cars out front, a VW Bug and a rust bucket of a '65 Chevy, a couple of mopeds. Hamid had traded some smokes for an old generator, traded some cigarettes to someone else to get it fixed, and now he actually had some juice. It had been quite the thing when he fired it up and the lights flickered on dimly. He had diverted the juice into 2 things, a fridge and one of the pumps for his gas tanks. John had instantly thought of asking Hamid to take the vials of insulin he still had, but Michaela had vetoed it. The generator-driven power was variable, shutting down, fired back up again. Better to keep it at a steady 55 than at 40 degrees that might suddenly climb to 60 or 70 before plunging back down below freezing. But still, his old friend had come through for him, a debt he could never repay, and he felt like a beggar every time he wandered in. "For my favorite little girl," Hamid would say as he pressed a small package into John's hands, a piece of newspaper with a pound or 2 of ice inside. Ice, a precious pound or two of ice to try to keep the temperature of the remaining vials down a few degrees. "I still owe you $20, John would always say, and Hamid would just smile, for he had little girls too, and he knew, and he was proud to be an American helping a friend. Michaela. Funny, John hadn't thought of her these last few days. My own starvation, he thought. The unessentials of the body shut down first, and after 4 years of celibacy after the death of Mary, he had grown used to it. He knew Michaela was interested in him. In a vastly different world, they would definitely have been dating, but not now. Besides, he did not want to upset the delicate balance of his family. Jen had been Mary's mother. How would she react? The girls? They might like Michaela as a friend, but as something more? For Jennifer, her mom was already becoming remote. But for Elizabeth, the death had hit at 12, a most vulnerable of times, and her room still had half a dozen pictures of the two of them together, and one that still touched John's heart, a beautifully framed portrait from Mary's high school graduation, the color fading, but Mary very much the girl he had met in college. He pulled up to the town hall complex. The rumble of a generator outside varied up and down in pitch as more power or less was being used. One of the fire trucks was being washed down. The mechanics had finally bypassed all the electronics, done some retrofitting, and the engine had finally kicked back to life 10 days ago. He walked in. Charlie was in his office, caught in the corner unmade, looking up as John came in. Charlie had lost 30 pounds or more, face pinched. He had a cup of what looked to be some herbal tea. "2 dead up at my house. Shot them this morning," John said matter-of-factly. "That's 8 reported now just this morning," Charlie replied, his voice hoarse. John sat down, looked at his pack of cigarettes, 14 left, and offered one to Charlie, who did not hesitate to take it. "Damn it, Charlie. You gotta get at least 1 extra meal in you." He shook his head. "Might not matter soon, anyhow." "Why's that?" "We think the posse is coming this way." "What?" "Don Barber flew his recon plane out a couple hours ago to take a look for us along Interstate 40 heading towards Hickory. He's yet to get back. 4 days ago, we didn't have a single refugee at the barrier. 2 days ago, nearly 100. Yesterday, more than 200. It's as if something is pressuring them from behind. Rumors running with them that Morganton was just looted clean. A damn medieval pillage. Also, we had a shooting last night on the interstate." "So that's becoming almost a daily routine," John said coolly. "This one was different. One of the few heading east. Big guy. Looked fairly well fed." "So what did he do?" "Washington spotted him. He just had a gut feeling because he had seen this same guy the day before heading west. He stood out because he looked so well fed. Washington tagged along with the escort taking this guy and some other refugees east and played dumb. The big guy was peppering him with questions. How many folks lived here? How much food left? Any organized defense? A spy? Exactly. So Washington drew down on him just before the gap and almost got killed for it. The guy had what Washington called an old-fashioned pimp gun up the sleeve of his jacket. Small .22. He actually got off the first shot, and then Washington blew him away. Washington okay? Nicked on the side. Keller said another inch in, and given the way things are now, he'd have been in deep trouble. Where is Washington now? Up at the college? I think we should go up." Charlie nodded, and the two got into John's Edsel for the short drive. The drive up to the campus reminded him yet again of the lost world of but several months back, his daily commute of not much more than 4 miles, and he thought again of bacon and eggs. Damn, that would be good now. He almost said it to Charlie. Food had indeed become the obsessive topic on people's minds. But now there was a ban on it being spoken of, a major breach of etiquette. It just made everyone crazy to talk about what they would eat when things got better. As they passed the turnoff to the North Fork Road, there were 2 more bodies covered with sheets out in front of a home. "Ah, shit, not the Elliots," Charlie sighed. 3 children were out on the lawn, all of them skinny as rails except that their stomachs were bloating, a neighbor clinging to them. That had started to appear over the last couple of weeks, kids with stomachs bloating out even as they starved. Keller told John it was edema, fluid buildup as their bodies inside began to shut down. It was the type of images he would always turn off when an infomercial ran for some Save the Kids type charity. Always it was kids in Africa or some disaster-stricken area in Asia with the bloated stomachs. He wondered if now, at this very moment, in a place in the world where electricity still flowed, such images were on their screens. Give now to save the starving children in America. God, it was a sobering thought. Would our friends overseas, those we had helped so many times, without a thought of any return, now be coming to us? Were ships loaded with food racing towards us? Or was there silence? Or worse, laughter and contempt? He was getting an extra ration as a gravedigger. In fact, 2 rations because he was digging 2 a day, Charlie said, interrupting John's thoughts. And taking them home to the kids and his wife, John said quietly. They didn't even slow down, but just drove on. They passed 3 boys, early teens, 2 of them toting .22s, the other a pellet gun, and the youngest with, yes, a bloated stomach as well. All 3 moving stealthily, peering up at the trees, the interlacing telephone and power lines. There was most likely barely a squirrel or rabbit left in town now, and birds were now becoming part of the pot. John's own hunts had started to come up empty unless he went deeper and deeper into the Pisgah forest. It knotted him up thinking about it. Zach had not even died with a meal in his stomach. He had come close to fighting with his Ginger for the rabbit he had bagged yesterday. Ginger was only allowed the bones after Jen had scraped off every bit of flesh for a rabbit stew. You know, we're actually starting to run short of small caliber ammunition, Charlie said as they drove past the boys. Most folks who had a .22 in the closet rarely dragged it out and at best maybe had a box of 50 to 100 rounds. Understand trading now is 5 bullets for a squirrel or rabbit. Fortunately, John still had several hundred in himself, but he was short on shotgun shells. The heavier caliber stuff, he had kept that for other reasons. The gate ahead was roadblocked. In the past, the students guarding it recognized his car and waved it through. Not today. They forced him to a stop, one of them standing back with a 12-gauge leveled while the other came around the side and looked in. "Good morning, sir. Are you okay?" "It's Rebecca, isn't it?" "Yes, sir." She looked in his back seat, nodded, and 2 students started up the Volkswagen, blocking the gate, let it roll forward for him to pass, then backed it into place and shut it down. "Kids are getting more cautious." "Well, with all the dead last night in break-ins," John said. "Lord knows how many others will find out today we're successful and the families inside the homes are not dead and rotting. I think it's safe to assume that some of this posse crowd have already infiltrated in, looked us over, and decided we are worth taking, at the very least to then move on to Asheville. Perhaps some are even holed up in some houses, watching if we are getting prepared." They turned into the drive, heading up to Gaither Hall, and the troops were out. The days of close-order drill long past, they were practicing covering fire and withdrawing in front of the library, Washington pacing back and forth, yelling instructions as John pulled up and turned off the car. Washington turned and went through the ritual, still the annoying ritual for John, of saluting, which he returned. Kids were all around. hunkered down low, concealed behind trees, under vehicles, up in windows of buildings. Farther up the road, John could see what must be the Red Force, Company B, deployed out beyond the girls' dorm, a dozen vehicles running, some Volkswagens, again courtesy of Jimmy Bartlett, a few farm pickup trucks. One had a fake machine gun mounted on the back. Technicals, John thought they were called in Somalia. Washington held up his megaphone.
"Captain Malady, now!"
Kevin Malady had been, of all things, an assistant librarian. With his strong, massive shoulders, thick black hair, and lantern jaw that made him look a bit like Schwarzenegger, the kids quickly giving him the nickname Conan the Librarian. He was ex-military, a sergeant with a mech unit in Iraq back in '03. He had just resigned from the library staff and had planned to go to Princeton Theological in the fall. Now he was the CO of Company B. He knew his stuff as they simulated the assault. The technicals supposedly laying down fire support, a vehicle with a plow bolted to the front, driving straight at the barrier. Of course it came to a stop, Washington shouting that the barrier had been pierced. Malady had more of his troops storm from around abandoned cars, rushing the barrier. If this had been done a few months ago, the kids would have been laughing, seeing it as play acting, shouting and whooping. Not now. They were silent, following directions from their officers, several of them staff and faculty with military experience, the defensive force pulling back to try to lure the attackers into what would be the killing zone if the gap was pierced on the interstate. A couple of 100 yards back from the gap, the road was flanked on one side by a high concrete wall, a sound barrier erected for several hundred yards to shield the conference center. Washington had already established firing positions on the reverse side of the wall. The campus chapel, the new one built several years back, which now housed a famous fresco, The Return of the Prodigal, by the famous artist Ben Long, was serving as a simulator for the wall, students suddenly popping up from behind the ridge of the roof.
"That's it," Washington shouted. "Once up, it's fire superiority. Pour it down fast and hard, fast and hard. Panic them."
The simulation was starting to break down, kids standing around. There could be no realism to it, no blanks, no Miles laser packs. They had used paintballs at the start, but the supply of those was used up in 2 days. Washington blew his whistle.
"Stand down. That's it. Take an all break. Dinner at noon."
To John's amazement, a fifer started to play, and it sent a chill down his back. It was the D'Incenzo boy, not a student at the college, a local kid who had belonged to the reenactment unit and had taken to hanging around the college. Washington had taken a liking to him, and he was now the official fifer for the militia, playing Yankee Doodle as the exercise ended. "Good marching stuff," Washington said as John looked back at the kid, wearing a Union capey. "The students love it, and it's good for morale." Students came out from buildings, crawled out from under concealment, all of them armed. Their equipment had been gradually upgraded. Most were armed with semi-autos, heavier caliber, a great percentage of Company B with deer rifles, a lot with scopes. Charlie had already said that if a crisis came, he'd release the automatic weapons kept in the police station to Washington. A few civilians had come forward as well, one showing up with what had been an illegal full-auto M16 with over 400 rounds, saying as long as he could tote it in a fight, he'd be part of the militia, a vet from the early days in Nam. Both companies were now rounded out by vets who had seen service as far back as Korea, adding nearly 100 to their ranks. These vets might be old, but they had combat experience and were now slotted in as squad and platoon leaders. Others, the survivalist types, including the legendary Franklins, were teaching the kids how to concoct homemade claymores, landmines, satchel charges, and homemade rocket launchers fashioned out of PVC pipe. The reenactors in the town regretted they could not get their hands on an original cannon, but were now mixing up black powder for these weapons and rigging up a field piece made out of steel pipe that would be packed with canister. As for the students, within seconds they were reverting back, a couple of the guys laughing, shouting good-natured insults. More than a dozen couples instantly paired up, a few of them without any attempt at stealth, with arms around each other, heading down towards the woods behind the science building. "There's a major problem brewing and figured we should check in with you," Charlie said, his voice thin, raspy. Washington nodded, and the three took the shaded path, walking over the old stone arch bridge that led from Gregor Dorm to Gaither. John had always loved this place in particular. On many a day he'd sit on the bridge to watch the creek tumble beneath him. Students were always passing by, and it was a great place to just hang out, chat with kids, sneak a smoke with another smoker. A breaking of the rules, since they were outside a designated spot, but the dean had given up a long time ago trying to hassle John about it, and the president actually thought it was good, a faculty member twisting the administrative tale a little with the kids joining in. They headed into President Hunt's office. He rarely showed at the campus now, though his home was but a quarter-mile away. In spite of the pleadings of John, Reverend Abel, and Washington, President Hunt had made a solemn statement that he and his wife would refuse extra rations. Every ounce of food had to go to our soldiers and volunteers. It was typical of him, incredibly noble, and as a result, he was dying. They walked in and sat down around the conference table in the office, and as they did so, a humming sputter echoed, and they were back up, looking out the windows. It was Don, in his Aranca L3, D-Day invasion stripes starkly visible on the wings and fuselage, clearing the crest by Lookout Mountain, and then dipping down into the narrow valley of the cove. He circled the campus once, tight turn, not 50 feet above the trees, saluted, and then leveled out to head south into town and the landing strip at the Ingram Shopping Plaza.
"So, let me guess. The posse is coming," Washington said. John and Charlie nodded in agreement. "It was inevitable. Sooner or later they'd hear about us and figure we had something worth taking." "He went out when? About 2 hours ago?" Washington asked. "Make it 2.5, John said. "That plane cruises at about 60. It ain't good news. They must be getting close." They went back to the table and sat down. "One of the boys bagged a bear last night," Washington said. "It's down in the cookhouse now. Meat for everyone at noon, maybe a pound apiece." John instantly felt his mouth water. Twice now they had bagged bears, and though greasy as hell, bear was filling. "I just wish we could get President Hunt to join us. I sent a couple of the girls up there to plead with him, and they said he just smiled and refused. They were crying when they came back, said he looks terrible." "That's Dan," John said quietly. "And maybe he's right. These kids have to be in good shape. We can't have them staggering like weak kittens if this posse shows up." "Are they ready?" Charlie asked. Washington shook his head. "Not very reassuring, damn it," Charlie replied sharply. "Look, Charlie, I love these kids, have known them for years. Down deep, they're mostly small-town kids with good hearts, and remember, as a Christian college here, we were drawing kids with particular values and views as well, or at least their parents saw it that way, even if the kids didn't. But if you want the harsh reality, I can pick out a couple of the young men for you. Kids who grew up in the projects in Charlotte or Greensboro or Atlanta, and they'll tell you a different story about reality. Kids at 12 capping each other and boasting about being gang bangers. Kids at 16 already with time in jail, maybe fathers already. Cold-eyed as dead snakes, and most of them dead at 25. The old sick joke, John sighed. You won't find a drug dealer with a 401k plan. Exactly, Washington snapped. These kids here, up until 2 months ago, were thinking grades, fooling around, getting married after college. The more mature ones, exactly that. Their 401k plans. What they face, if we face it, will not just be gangbangers from cities. What will have gravitated to this posse will be every low-life scum with a will to do anything to survive. Mix into that the psychos that Doc Keller was talking about. What happened to guys in prisons when this hit? Where are they now? Remember, our proud country had more people in prison per populace than damn near anywhere else in the world. Let them starve? Execute all of them? Maybe in some of the maximum security houses the warden might have done just that. The food runs out and he lines them all up and shoots them rather than let them escape. But the minimum places, I bet those people were over the little chain-link fences by the third day. Most of the kids with a stupid-ass drug charge went home, but you already had some bad hombres in those places, and they would gravitate together, and now the world is a paradise, wide open, whatever they want, if they have the balls to take it. Washington shook his head. The food's run out here in the East, Washington continued. If we win the Midwest, the Corn Belt, Cattle Belt, I'd be more optimistic. But here, density of population versus on-hand food, it's out. It's gone. And those barbarians, for they are barbarians, know only one thing now: find food and gorge and take and inflict pain as they never dreamed possible before this happened. They're thinking that, even as we sit around this table talking about rations, the nobility of our college president, they debate whether to shoot and eat our dogs. John winced at that. Of course, Washington didn't know about this morning, nor did he notice John's reaction. The phone rang. The sound of it when it did happen was still rather startling. The three looked at one another, and John stood up, went over to the president's desk, and picked up the receiver. It was an old rotary phone from the 40s or 50s, receiver heavy, wire not even the coiled type yet, just jet black and hanging down. Matheson here. John, is that you? It's Tom here. Go ahead, Tom. I'm here with Don Barber. I just picked him up and brought him to the town hall. What did he say? Damn, John, he's pretty shaken. Can you bring him up? Sure, John. We'll be there in 5 minutes. Over here. The line continued to hum for several seconds until Judy, the switchboard operator at the town hall, pulled the connect and the line went dead. John hung up. I think we got problems. Barber will be here in a few minutes with his report. They just made small talk as they waited, John standing, looking out the window, smoking what was now his 7th cigarette of the day. A group of students was coming down from behind the upper men's dorm. 6 girls and a couple of guys. The granola crew, they were called, and though they were mildly disdained before the day, no one mocked them now. Most of them were outdoor ed or bio majors and had become highly proficient at food gathering, knowing which roots to dig, which plants could be brewed into teas, which had some medicinal value. One of the girls had a copy of Peterson's Guide to Plants, dirty and worn, in her jeans pocket. Another girl was carrying a basket filled with mushrooms. So far, there had been no mistakes on that score. Another was being helped by a boy, the woven basket between them piled high with greens. The boy and girl looked like some Rousseau ideal, a fantasy of the way the world was supposed to be if civilization went away. The antique World War II Jeep, which Tom had designated his official squad car, turned the corner and pulled up to Gaither. Barber got out along with Tom, and they came straight in. Barber saw the cigarette in John's hand and sighed. Damn, I haven't had one of those in years, he said softly. John, could I? John hesitated, nodded, and handed one over. He was now down to 11. Don took a deep drag, sighed, went over to the table, and sat down. They're coming, he said. No one spoke. Old Fort is a wreck. I flew down there first. At least 50 vehicles loaded with... He paused, took another drag, and then waved his hand in a gesture of disgust. I can't even find a word to describe the scum. They were in the center of the town, most of it burning. There's fighting going on even now, but that town is finished. He sighed and looked out the window. Shit.
It was like Korea in '51. If only I had a battery of 105s up here, we could have annihilated their advance guard with one salvo. Advance guard? Washington asked. Barber nodded. Give me a minute, Washington. My brain's a bit slower now. Let me tell it in order. No one spoke. Like I said, about 50 vehicles. Most in the center of the town, those barbarians just running amok. I could see them gunning people down right in the middle of the street, flushing them out of buildings they were setting on fire. Out on the interstate, about 10 more vehicles. They took a couple of pot shots at me. You'll see a dozen or so holes in my plane, by the way. So I figured to check up the road, fly up along Route 70, then come back down along the interstate. There wasn't much on 70, though it was obvious they had passed along it. Buildings burning, but a couple 100 yards back from the road I could see people out, still alive. It looked like they just were driving straight through. Marion wasn't hit hard, just off the interstate enough, I guess, to be bypassed. Plus, they had well-manned roadblocks in the access ways in. Some evidence of fighting, but looks like the scum backed off. Think they'll back off here? Tom asked. No, John said forcefully. First off, their spies have scoped us out. They know we still do have some resources. Second, to get into Asheville, a sweet big city to loot, they first have to go through us. Third, they are heading this way and there is now no backing off. Marion they might mark for later, but I think it's here first. Washington nodded his agreement. What happened next, Don? John asked. I pushed on to Morganton, down to exit 103 on the interstate. He lowered his head. I thought Charlotte was bad when I flew around it back when things started. That was different, though. In Charlotte there was rioting, yes, but people were mostly just trying to snatch and grab, or just getting the hell out. This was different. How so, sir? John asked. You know the mental hospital grounds there? All nodded. Broen, the state mental hospital, was set back from the interstate about half a mile. Beautiful open lawn, surrounded by the old, sedate southern town of Morganton, complete with some antebellum homes on the main street. A fucking nightmare. John was shocked by Don's language. He was a devout church-going man. How bad? Washington asked. My God, I think they're killing people and eating them, he whispered. No one spoke for a moment. John just staring off, puffing on his cigarette right down to the filter. You're kidding, Charlie whispered. Don looked over at him fiercely. Would I joke about that? He snapped. There were a couple of 100 vehicles parked on the grounds of the hospital in a big circle, like they were circling the wagons. Old cars, jeeps, trucks, even a couple of tractor-trailers. Inside that circle, the ground was blackened from a huge fire that was still smoldering. It was early when I flew over there. You could see them just sprawled out, sleeping it off. The hospital was burning, dead scattered all around it, most of the downtown burning as well, dead carpeting the streets. But it was what was inside that circle of old cars, trucks, motorcycles. He finished the cigarette, stubbed it out in an empty coffee cup, and looked, appealing, at John. John handed him another and pulled one out for himself. It was down to 9 now. They had something like a gallows set up. Bodies were hanging from it. Don shook and started to cry. They were cut open, some without legs and arms, 10 or more like that, like hogs hung up to be butchered. My God! He fought for composure. You could see other people who were prisoners. As I flew over, they were looking up at me, starting to jump up and down, waving like poor bastards stranded in a nightmare. I side-slipped to get down lower for a closer look. One of those scum. I could see him looking up at me, and as I flew over, he cut a woman's throat. Cut it so I could see it. That's when I almost got shot down. They have an automatic, and it opened up, stitched my starboard wing. I dived down low, skimmed over not a dozen feet high, weaved and dodged. He smiled, like the old days. Damn, I was good then. Could put my spotter between two trees not 30 feet apart with telephone wires waiting on the other side. And then he seemed to unfocus again. I don't want to believe what I saw. John sighed, sat back, lost in thought. Cannibalism. Leningrad, Stalingrad. With those cases, it was civilians driven mad by hunger. Reports as well in China, and frightfully, documentation of Japanese soldiers doing it, either out of desperation when cut off by the island-hopping campaign, or ritualistically against American POWs. Not here, Charlie sighed. Not here. This is America, for heaven's sake. Yes, here, John said softly. Why should we be any different? Damn it all. We're Americans. It just doesn't happen here. Donner Pass, the Essex, Jeffrey Dahmer. Our sick fascination with films about that Lecter character? 60 days with little or no food just because the electric suddenly shut off. Hell yes, John said coldly. Most likely some damn cult down there. Like Doc said, psychotics running loose. The cult over in Knoxville, with its leader proclaiming he was John the Baptist reincarnated, was still running. There were reports of others, some nutcase proclaiming he was the Messiah, others speaking in tongues and looking for answers in Revelation, others just beyond madness, believing that aliens had invaded. He thought of that one small coven up above Haw Creek, a couple of dozen families in a church, which, according to rumors not long ago, was into passing snakes around. They had sealed themselves off completely, said that it was the end time and God's wrath was at hand. No one dared to even get within 100 yards of their barrier now, and John wondered what madness they were practicing up there. They have nothing to lose now, John continued. A nation under martial law, they've looted, raped, murdered. They know that if civilization ever gets the upper hand again, any semblance of order, all of them, will be put against the wall and shot. So, nothing to lose. Mix into that the terror of it all. We figured out it was an EMP, but others, especially others who were already off-kilter, what's the answer? God got angry? Gaia, the earth spirit, got pissed? Satan took over? He found he was almost on the edge of hysteria himself. His hand shaking slightly, he pulled out another cigarette and tossed yet another over to Don. Satan's taken over. Maybe whoever's leading them is preaching that. God has turned his back on America, Satan has won, so anything goes. I doubt if all of them are doing it. I want to think most of them are as terrified of whoever is running their crew as we are. But I'm willing to bet whoever is running it is shouting that he has the inside dope from God, Satan, whomever. It's insane, Charlie whispered. Remember Jonestown? Those were Americans, even though they no longer lived in the 48, and nearly 1,000 of them committed suicide because of some damn nutcase who told them to drink Kool-Aid laced with poison because God had ordered it through him. Look, you get people scared, then you knock out every prop that we've taken for granted. After these last 60 days, I bet there's a dozen prophets running around this country saying, "Follow me," and even if but 0.1% of the survivors do so, that will still be hundreds of thousands of barbarians on the march and the rest of us running, scared shitless of them. Damn our enemies who did this to us. They knew us well, John sighed. They knew human nature too well, and just how fragile civilization is, and how tough it is to defend it. Something we forgot. No one spoke until Don finally stirred. I flew back along the interstate, he said softly. I counted, between Morganton, Old Fort, and on the road, about 250 vehicles total. 1,000 to 1,500 people then, Washington said. And just remember this, gentlemen. I was a trained artillery spotter, so I know how to count and how to spot. We don't doubt you, Charlie said. In this case, don't doubt me. Now, for the troubling aspect tactically. They're coming round the back, John said. Exactly. That's why I flew over here on my way back. I counted 24 vehicles on the old dirt road right at the base of the mountains by Andrews Geyser, some on the abandoned paved road, a couple more farther up, near where the railroad track crosses over the old dirt road. They know our back door, and not just the interstate. Any on the old fire roads? Charlie asked. Don shook his head. Hard to see with the summer canopy, he said. I doubt it, Washington interjected. Unless they have a couple of local boys, those old fire roads are mazes. My bet is they'll stick to the old, abandoned paved road, the dirt road farther to the north, and the railroad track as the flanker, and they'll hit there first. I agree, Charlie said. They could be here trying to maneuver into a flanking position by late afternoon, Don said. John nodded. They must have a good military leader in there, knows his stuff, and has done a thorough recon on us by now and sees the flank roads as the opening move. They'll hit just before dawn, John said. Hope to catch us sleeping. If I was one of them, Don here flying around would tell me that what's waiting for them has some kind of warning, so they will move fast rather than give us time to prepare. We can pray they're just a mob that overruns by numbers and surprise, but it looks like there are some ex-military with them. Worst case, they got a couple of recon types who know how to figure out the ground, the defenses, the approaches, and formulate the plan of attack. Their advance party is in Old Fort to secure the place for the rest of them later today. I'd bet by late afternoon, their advance will start probing, and we've got to meet them forward of the potential line of battle. They see our setup, get a good judgment on our strength, we'll have even more problems holding. They'll lager in Old Fort tonight and tear the place apart, then hit us before dawn. We'll be prepared, Washington said sharply and stood up. We feed the troops, then move them into position today. Washington, we've talked about this scenario, so we both know the plans. I want officers' briefing within the hour. Tom, start to evacuate all homes behind our fallback line beyond the old toll road, as we've talked about before. Charlie, I want every citizen who can carry a gun as our reserve. Mr. Barber, I hope you can stay up in the air most of the day. Keep high, though, sir. Real high. Just keep an eye on their movements, John said. Washington looked around the room, a thin smile on his face. Charlie, shriveled with emaciation, said nothing, but his gaze communicated volumes. John was now in charge. I think we should get to work, gentlemen, John said. Tom headed back to his car with Don by his side. Washington looked over at John and Charlie. Gentlemen, I think it's important you join us in chapel and for our meal. 2 hours later, after the officers' briefing and a map exercise, the 1 to 25,000 geological survey maps taken from the small map store in Black Mountain spread out on the table, John felt everyone understood their mission. Several of the platoon leaders were students, Jeremiah and Phil having been promoted to second lieutenants in the 1st and 2nd platoons of Company A. The others were vets from around the town, a good sprinkling of men from Desert Storm, a few from Nam. John walked into the dining hall. Strange. It still looked basically the same. The counter where kids used to get their meal cards swiped with a laser scanner, circular tables, the twin doors leading into the food serving area. It was a room filled with a lot of happy memories and a few poignant ones. This school was unlike what he had expected when he had first come here. He feared that his old commandant, in his rush to get John a job where Mary once lived, had most likely hooked him into some fundamentalist camp meeting. Not that he had any particular objection on a philosophical level as an American, but still he was a Catholic kid from Jersey. His fears could not be farther from the truth. It had turned into the warmest place he had ever worked in. He had been greeted with open arms into a community where friendly intellectual debate was encouraged. Though a few might be a bit judgmental, most were actually very open-minded, saying that was the true spirit of what Christ tried to teach, and not the nuttiness most outside the South believed of them, and all were guided by a desire to put their students first. The school was better than John ever imagined, and now, at this moment, he realized yet again just how much he loved them all, especially the kids, now sitting at the tables, decked out in camo gear, weapons stacked along the walls. The tradition with faculty was not to eat segregated off, but rather to join a table with their students, laugh, debate, argue, tease, stimulate. Mary had attended this college her first year before transferring to far more competitive Duke, and coming here was coming home for her. Several of the professors had even taught her long ago. Towards the end, she often came here to join John for lunch, and always kids would gather round their table, and those who fully knew her condition would usually leave her with a kiss to the forehead, an embrace, and "I'm praying for you every day, ma'am." And then she was gone. But still, in the 4 years afterwards, so many happy days here, of shared meals, of the absolutely ridiculous but still touching dumb skits by the faculty for the senior breakfast the day before their graduation. But now, the cafeteria lines were closed, the food service off to the far side, tables set up near the back door, the grill outside smoking madly with the slabs of bear meat. Most of the students had already taken their plates, each proportion carefully cut, a slab of bear meat, some greens, a cup of herbal tea. That was it. But still a pound or more of meat, while downtown at this moment everyone else was getting thin soup with just a couple ounces of meat mixed in. And yet, in spite of their hunger, they remained restrained. None had yet to cut in. All sat around their tables, talking but not touching the food. John looked over at Charlie. "You will eat," John said sharply. "John?" "Charlie, you will eat." He pushed Charlie forward, and they joined the back of the line. It only took a few seconds before they were handed the plate, the piece of meat already cut. John noticed that the cooking staff actually had a scale behind the carving table, each piece of meat thrown on it before being put on a plate. Maybe the measurement would be off by an ounce or two one way or the other, but still it was a message to stifle any arguments. John followed Washington to a table set directly in front of the now closed doors that had once opened onto the cafeteria line. As they reached their table, the room fell silent. All eyes turned towards them. Without prompting, Reverend Abel stepped forward and offered the blessing and finished, John and a few others making the sign of the cross. But Washington remained standing. "I am proud of you," Washington said. The room was absolutely silent, no matter how longingly some looked at the feast before them, a largesse of meat not seen in weeks. "I am proud of all of you, everyone. Those who are bringing in food for us, especially our marksman Brett Huffman." Brett, who had dropped the bear, stood up, and there was a round of applause and cheering. "But also for all the rest of you. Those of you gathering, those of you searching, those of you in jobs some might think unglamorous, the work in the refugee center, the isolation ward, the infirmary, the wood-cutting crews." He looked around the room. "Tonight or tomorrow, we face battle." A murmur swept through the room. "You've heard the rumors about a group called the Posse. We just received intelligence they are headed this way." No one spoke, but John could see the anxious looks back and forth. "There will be battle by this time tomorrow, and some of you will die. I have never lied to you. I never will. Some of you will die." And now he had their attention like never before. "You are now soldiers, every one of you. Those of you who trained for it and those who have not. Every student of this college is now mobilized as we previously discussed. Those who are not assigned to our 2 combat companies will fall in as medics, messengers, and in the other jobs you have been trained for.
I expect all of you to do your duty as soldiers." Washington turned and started to sit down. Before John even quite realized what he was doing, he stood up. A few had started to cut into their meal, but as he stood, they stopped, looking towards him. "Tonight, tomorrow, you will fight. It is tragically the day you grow up, and you will never be able to turn back from. You are the defenders of thousands of people in this town who are now too weak to defend themselves. And now I will be blunt. I will fall silent for a moment, and I want you to look at the meal before you. That food is food sacrificed by others to give you strength to defend them and yourselves." He did fall silent, and no one spoke, nearly all looking down at their plates. Think of, and he actually chuckled sadly, think of how 2 months back we complained about the food here, filled our plates, then tossed half of it out. And now, tonight, you will face men and women who will kill you and everyone else for that piece of meat on your plate you would have thrown out but 2 months back. He hesitated, but knew it had to be said. Or even your own flesh, if they win. Because not 40 miles from here, this evil band is slaughtering human beings for food. There was an uncomfortable stirring. So for everything you eat now, know that but 2 miles from here, down in the town of Black Mountain, 6 died of starvation this morning. Died so you can eat and have strength to survive and defend. He sighed, started to sit down, and then stopped. Some of you were in my classes on military history. You know how we so casually talked of wars past, the suffering, remote. You remember some of the speakers I've brought in, veterans of that generation we now call the greatest generation. He braced himself, looking around the room.
Crap, I'm muted. Sorry, guys. Let's cover medical
what's going
first. Oh, not much. How you doing? I'm trying to work stuff so I can get a new pew that I don't necessarily need, but it is a good deal. And a good pew. Laughlin knows a little bit about it. So medical. Nobody is going to trade medical for you. And generators are not a good way to keep things that you absolutely need a constant temperature refrigerated. They'll be good enough to keep like a freezer going or something, but as far as like insulin, no go. What's up, Grit? Seeing the issue with a larger force than yourself. Now, this is the part of the book that I kind of sometimes turn off because, like, the battle is 100% fictional and stuff like that, you know. You guys can unmute and BS with me.
I mean, monologue, baby. It's your show.
I don't. Regardless, the greater force. Now these guys are talking about 1,500 people. Realistically, you're not going to get that many people without military leadership working against you. But say it's 50 people, 100 people, and maybe they are looting because they are. Oh, Waffle, you're in here twice. Uh-oh. Come on, mouse, work. Uh-oh. Hang on. Waffle was being a dingling.
And Muffins being Muffins.
Yep. Well, yeah. What's up, Pat?
Hey,
So,
Heyo. Just MB.
having a large force, and I know we talked about it another time. They had military presence for blockade, or not military, but the one town they kind of stayed away from because they had a heavy presence at the blockade. Well, they have a large population of a whole town there, right? If it's just you and you're defending one structure, lawfully might be right. The more I think about it, where you don't show your patrols and stuff like that, I still think you take patrols, but maybe you disguise it. I still think LPOPs are a very important thing. They can also double as
That's
hunting
what I'm saying.
lines.
The more overt defense you put up in a situation like that, the more you look like you've got something worth taking.
Yeah, but you still need your circles of, hey, you're not fighting at your doorstep. So, I mean, maybe you don't have 10 guys at an LPOP, but maybe you have like one dude in a tree stand. I don't know. It's hard, but I do think that pulling them inside a structure that is a little bit hardened to fire is a good idea as well. Because you can get really good glass now. I mean, you can get super really good spotting scopes, really good binoculars. You really don't have to walk that far if you have a good good glass, you know. And you don't need to take no 1,000-yard shot. I know everybody, all preppers, are like, you need a 308 in case you need to take a 1,000-yard shot. Most people realistically can't really shoot past 400. Like,
And
you might get a skilled guy.
and the
with-
odds of the people that are 1,000 yards away, the odds of them being able to actually touch you is very low too.
Right. You're not going to receive
And
fire.
good glass is getting cheaper and cheaper. So
Right. And I agree. The ability to maybe see somebody that far, cool, you know, observe and report. But most people, realistically, I know deer hunters that 300 yards is a shot. I mean, 300 yards is a shot depending if you're huffing and puffing, you know what I mean? Like, if you're good, you get dialed in with your gun, yeah, 500-600 yards. But that is a lot of really, really getting dialed in. That is a lot of shooting. Like, most people, if you're realistic with yourselves, 300 and under is most long rifle engagements, right? And honestly, most engagements you're still going to have an SHTF. I would still say our pistol, because it's going to be what's on you. And most people are you know, they're going to be trying to get into structures, and if that's the structure you're in, that's going to be what's on your nightstand, like it is right now, right? You guys got anything on that?
well, most of us in this group are more of wanting to avoid all the confrontation anyway. So I
Right.
think it's the right way to go.
Yeah, Chance said it. Drones. You can do a lot with a drone, and they're cheap. You don't even have to walk it. You can spend more time developing your infrastructure and things like that, and bettering yourself. I'd much rather spend 6 hours extra in the garden than walking around doing nothing, wasting calories that we don't have.
If you're in a wooded area, though, the drone is a lot less effective. Can't really see through the trees unless it's wintertime.
Depends on what kind of drone you got.
Thermal, baby. You can scout it out with a thermal scope.
It's still doesn't go through the trees. The thermal drone isn't the superpower that we're led to believe by the YouTube creators.
No, just a thermal scope. A thermal drone's like $5,000.
Yeah, even the thermal drones, like a couple of channels have gone through and actually like tried to hunt. I mean, I'm sure you guys saw the dirty civilian videos that came out where they're trying to hunt the dude with the thermal drone and drones, and 2 versus 1. It's not the it's not the
the drone that's
X-ray vision we
winning.
thought it was. It's not the X-ray vision we thought it was. Like, it's easily tricked if you know what you're doing.
Yeah. But
Especially if you're in an environment where there's other things the same or extremely similar temperature to your body.
But let's say it's a biker gang, right? It's a biker gang or it's a cartel gang. They're just
It's a gang.
yeah, it's a gang. They
You
are
say
warlording,
ATM
right?
machines,
They're
pretty
not. They're warlording. They're like Negan. They're not going to plant a garden. They're just inflicting violence. Those kind of people. Not all of them. There may be some military trained and some stuff, but those guys aren't LARPinators like Dirty Civilian. Like those guys are not going to know how to hide from stuff like that. And neither mostly are we. Like anybody in here listening, if you're realistic with yourself, you don't know how to evade a drone. You don't know how to evade military tech, most of us. You might know some old school shit, but are they really going to tell you modern up-to-date shit? Like trench grenade and Grand Thumb said it. Like they already have stuff to confirm life. I don't remember how they worded it, but they couldn't say too much about it. Basically,
the shit.
Yeah, they have shit that can figure out your heartbeat from however far away. They can satellite zoom you in, and they have your fucking face in a little profile bubble like on Facebook, dude. Most of us are not going to escape that stuff. So if that stuff's really used against you, you're in a really bad way, right? Like country is absolutely 100% lost, and you become mole people. But this is let's take that to maybe the top 5% of people that are using that stuff, and probably not against the human populace of their country of origin. I hope the other 95%, you're going to have some fudge. You're going to have some gangbangers. You're going to have some just normal people like us that like to get out and shoot. You're going to have the people that absolutely hate guns. You're going to have the blue-haired freaks. You're going to have the furries. Like you're going to have old people, and you're going to have babies. So population spreading apart, you're really going to have to worry about what? 10% of people that are super duper bad? You know? The big motivator is going to be food. And when they were talking about the bloated stomach thing, you know, if you guys could go and buy 10 packs of 2 pounds of rice at the dollar store, or go buy a 20-pound sack or a 50-pound sack of rice or oatmeal, at the end of the day, that is really the biggest thing in prepping, is having enough water. I don't know if you guys caught my water filter video. I have a lot more on the road coming. We did a lot of testing. Okay. Filters are the best way to store water, because if I could store 1,000 gallons of water that these filters can do, I probably don't need to worry about anything else. If I have the room and the capability to safely store it and have it be drinkable, potable water, I'm doing really good. That's like top 1% of preppers, right? That's like super loaded level. Okay. Let's be realistic. How many ICB totes are you going to have? How many people are you going to be able to see that some dude could shoot it with their hunting rifle? You got a leak. If you're not treating that water, problem. You have a small water tower on your property or a really good well. What's your backup if the well fails? It's a water filter. I just added to my stock 10 5-gallon stackable water totes, right? It took me the course of a month to kind of go buy a couple of them at a time, so it didn't look crazy. And when somebody asks us, they're for camping / hunting, and it's my shit, so what's your problem? You know what I mean? But guess what? That shit takes up space and is heavy. You know how much a water filter weighs? Like nothing. You know how many you could store in the same amount of space? I could probably store a couple years worth of water filtration in the same space that I just stored 50 gallons. Or 50, yeah, some shit like that. Anyway. So, I mean.
Yes, that equates to 50, Muffin.
Thank you. Well, I was going down 2 different roads, and I left like the military thing, trying to be non-realistic to people. You're going to have the internet keyboard warrior who weighs 500 pounds. It's like, oh, yeah, you need to carry around 2 long guns and have 14 plates and flashbangs and blah, blah, blah. But the guy can't walk a block.
For what?
Useless, right? And you're going to have the people on psychotic drugs or on actual drugs, like bad shit, you know, fentanyl, bath salts, that kind of, like, they are going to be on another planet, right? but they're going to be a little bit crazy and a problem. You're going to have the fiends, like the extreme alcoholics, maybe the pedophiles, you know, the people that like to, there's people that like to rape, you know what I mean? And I had somebody tell me, they're like, I don't think I could take a life. He's like, I don't know why you brought a gun for me. And I'm like, if your daughter was about to be raped, you would shoot somebody if you had the ability. If you had someone you loved about to have their throat slit, you would do what you had to do. There would be no, I don't think I could shoot somebody. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it would
all
be a
that
switch.
shit's gonna go out the window real fucking quick.
Right. And that's been beaten into us via rules of society. Well, just look at all the immigrants we've had come here. We don't have rule. They don't have those rules of society. They don't care about becoming a higher end civilization. They bring in their median level of how they want to live and just live here. It's a problem. That's also going to be introduced in HHTF. They have a little bit of advantages. They don't need as many cushy things that we have. You know, a lot of them, they don't need air conditioning. They need a pond, and they're going to boil their water. And if they get diarrhea, they don't really care. You know what I mean? Like,
I like this book.
yeah, it's a good book. The problem is, I wish something was more up to date.
I think you could
Well, the neat
rewrite
thing
it
is-
for the modern times, and it'd be pretty good. Go for
It'd be
it.
good. No, I don't have time for that. Chance, get on it. You're the author.
You can ask AI.
No, don't need the machines to take over anything else.
Stop
man.
training the damn machine.
Let's see. You
The,
could
water
get
storage
AI to do
versus-
it. Get AI to do it, and then you publish it on Amazon under a pseudonym. You could be like so the William R.
Reading
Forston. You
top.
could be, you could be like Ron John No Foreskin or something.
No. Special Forces eye patch Delta Force Bravo. Can't tell you what I did in the military, but here's a book about it. 1911 never die.
Fuck's sakes.
Your water filtration versus storage is highly dependent on your area. If there's no water to filter, then
That's
Water
true. If I was in
filter.
like Arizona,
it's going to do
I
nothing.
need water.
You have to store water.
Arkansas is dry right now. So dry.
Nebraska's been dry my whole life, but we still have some water in the river, and we have wells. But you need to be able to power it. I just know after lugging around that water and moving totes and shit around, I am considerably lightening all of my stuff. And I know Pat said it when I was going through and rotating stuff to my pantry for my long-term storage. When I and he's like, "You just had back surgery. I don't think you should be loading that tote up." And he's probably right. There should be 2 totes instead of where one is. I think you should probably max all your food storage at 50 pounds. That way, could your wife get it? Yeah, but could you both get it and haul it around to the stairs in the vehicle? Could your kid get it? You know, you get a strong kid and your wife, and then you get one by yourself. Absolutely. You know what I mean? So I think, and the problem with that is space again, because that's going to double the totes that you have. But preppers, especially when I was moving my ammo stuff around, dude, there comes a point when you don't want to haul that many rounds ever in your life again. And it's a workout. And that's a problem. It can be a good problem, but you can't have it all in one spot. You really have to have some stuff spaced out. All your eggs in one basket. I mean, dude, if you smoke yourself unloading your house, your apartment, your living quarters in the first 48 hours, and you are just passed out asleep and nobody can wake you up because you were so physically exhausted for moving your supplies, you are absolutely useless to everybody else.
And you're fucking toast.
And somebody's seen you move that shit. I mean, there's no way My fat ass, I sweat down to my crotch and my butt crack. Somebody didn't see me hauling all that stuff out. You know what I mean?
That's why I like the idea of having a smaller enclosed trailer that's already packed up basically and ready to go.
I like that. Other than the fact,
For a couple of $100, just sit it in your driveway.
but weather, it's going to sweat in the summer. The heat and the cold are going to be an issue with your short.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things that can't go in there for sure.
Right. But there's some stuff like you got some vacuum sealed blankets and some clothing. You got your 20 pairs of Duluth underwear vacuum sealed. Yeah, you could totally have totes of clothing in there. As long as you're treating it for varmints, you do your sprays inside and outside the trailer and keep, stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely. There's non-perishable preps. I mean, you could store empty plastic jugs in there. You could store all kinds of. Yeah, you know what, Pat? I go for Pat. I agree.
And if you had all your preps like in a garage or someplace where you could just hand truck that stuff right into the back of the trailer, you could have that thing packed up in like 15 minutes with a hand truck and totes.
When I was an HVAC tech, I went into a garage of a prepper, and I thought I was a prepper. This guy had a 4-car garage that no car could fit in. And he had trailers and stuff outside, but the entire garage had boxes and boxes. I was like going through it, there MREs, beans, and then he had like soft gun cases here and there, and like it wasn't as organized as I would have had it. But I was talking to the guy. I was like, "Oh man, this is sweet! Like I have a micro version of this in a closet." He's like, "You need to get a bigger version of it because you got to get prepped up for what's coming." And he just flat said it like. I'm like, "Oh, so you're a prepper." I was like, I've been watching Doomsday Prepper and kind of taking some notes, and we had conversation. And he's like, "This is enough for 11 people." And he said, "Don't bother coming here because we will kill you." And I was like, I'm just here to fix your AC, brother. He had a mouse, made a nest on top of his capacitor, and it fried it.
Yeah, there's no point in having all that shit prepped up if you're not conducting pest control.
Yep.
Because guess what? That amount of shit that you had stored up for 11 fucking people is all gross. You're not doing your proper pest control, moving shit around.
Yeah, and unless those guns were vacuum sealed, firearms are not a good spot to keep in the garage. Like, we got an old trusty 22 and a shotgun. They're just for varmints, and they just work. A reliable bolt action, a revolver. Yeah, you can clean them, and they'll make it.
All that stuff. If you're keeping it lubricated, it'll be fine.
Yeah, you might get a little bit of surface rust here and there, but yeah, it's still going to shoot whatever's outside, right?
I mean, even then, if you're visiting it once every 4 to 6 months, depending on your
AKA Ron John No Foreskin. That's my channel. Nice. Old man butt wrinkles. That is something you're gonna have to pay to find out, my dude.
I didn't
What
have
did he
to
say?
pay. I just had them forced to be back.
If I was circumcised.
Oh,
Please join my only spams.
I was
I'd
going
be
to say shameless
interested,
plug for only spams.
That's $1,000 a month tier level.
If you were ever to run into a similar guy to that, I wonder if you couldn't have a conversation with him where he's like, "Don't show up here." I'm like, well, what if I showed up and I had like 2 years of my own supply and I brought all these skills with me? Would you let me in then?
Well, the
It's
guy
like,
still
no,
lives there.
I just steal your shit and shoot you.
Well, and that's the whole thing that we talked about.
Trust.
Well, and we talked
have to
about that
trust
before.
somebody.
It's like, at what point do you start, talking to people for 5 minutes and being like, see if they're worth the fuck, to have around. It's a
And I
rough
would-
call to make.
I would definitely keep, a record of that guy, because who's to say he's not on vacation in Hawaii when shit hits the fan and there's just nobody there.
Oh, there's someone there.
Well, as an HVAC tech with my ADHD, things that make me tick, like Lawfully, he can hear knives or gun slides, and his autism's like, oh, I know what that is, and he gets excited about it. I see the gun safes and the gas masks and the guns on the wall, and oh, hey, this guy's got like 8 boxes of MREs over here in the corner. Like, you see that when you're in people's houses, and you kind of make like a mental note. Now, I have also known werewolf preppers to, like, they're a Culligan guy or they're like maintenance people for the whole apartment or whatever, and they keep a notepad and they say, when some shit goes down, this room, this room, this room, this room, we're gonna go rob. And so that's a double-edged sword. That's why you shouldn't have all your crap out and about, right? Sparking conversations like that could go one of two ways, right? Like when I went in there to that dude's garage, I was like, holy crap. Right? But if I'm the wrong dude going to that guy's house, that guy might have a potential problem. Because if he says that was enough for 11 people, and they go back and say, hey, this guy says it's enough for 11 people, and they bring 50 dudes, that's a problem.
Yeah, in a situation like that, if I was desperate and I knew where a cache like that was, I'd definitely go check it out from afar. Observe for a couple of days, see if there's any activity whatsoever.
Double-edged sword. If they got that much shit, they probably have way better nods, way better thermal than I got. They probably have the $5,000 rescue drone. When you hit like that tier of prepping, like your checklist gets a little shorter.
Or a bunker.
Yeah. He might have one.
I've been trying to think of some kind of tank that will survive under the ground. Make a small bunker at my new spot.
Go to Home Depot, a tornado shelter.
So I have a question for the group.
Somebody was saying that they were putting like the big septic tanks in the ground. Well, my understanding is those collapse if you don't fill them full of water.
Kind of like our strategic reserves. The stuff holding the fuel will break. It doesn't have any wrong word choice. Exerting pressure outside, right?
I have a question for the group.
Go for
this hypothetical dude with the 4-car garage and yada yada. You know of something like I'm speaking in hypothetical.
Okay.
A guy with that kind of stuff. Like Pat said, he would go scope it out. At what point in time do we decide that, like, if not used, it becomes forfeit? Like when, like, because eventually, if something happens, to not use those goods is a shame. Like, especially if the
maybe
guy
he was in Hawaii and didn't make it home. Yeah.
Yeah. Or he was on a business flight or something and he went down, or he had all that stuff, but he also was on 3 different medications that kept him alive, and his 90 days of medicine ran out or whatever.
Yeah.
Like eventually, things uncontested become forfeit. Like it's a new world and we're scavengers.
That's where you take the least. So I'm a little bit of a proponent to a sacrificial lamb in your group.
I'm not.
No, I know who my sacrificial lamb is in my group.
I see
He's
your
the one
point,
going.
Lockley. And I think at that point, you just make direct contact and say, hey, man, I'm not a bad guy. I know about this stuff. I'm not the only one here. Like, would you like to work together?
I'm not trying to group up with people. I'm saying, like, you've got a cache left unattended kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, either because you happen to cross it or because pre-event, because of your job now or whatever, you're aware of a location.
Said goods.
Yeah. Or a person that you're sure is doing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying be a werewolf, And I'm not trying. I mean, I'm not saying like link it up with people that you knew before the event that had goods or whatever. I'm saying, they're sitting there in a warehouse of sorts, like just unused, or a garage or a bunker or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that person hasn't made it. It's D-Day plus 285. Like we got to assume. That guy's not making it.
I'd like to ask you a question. What is your answer to your question? Like what makes you, what's your comfortable? Because I don't know. And that's $1 million question. There's no right answer. You know what I mean? So,
I mean,
using the book as our process,
using this book and its scenario as our barometer. I say, like, if we've not seen or heard of dude making any activity on it, I say definitely by 2 months it's fair game. Because like you're getting to where you're getting.
Somebody in.
If you hadn't made it to wherever you're going in 2 months, like it's not getting any fresher.
Yeah, kind of like the houses scenario with Jericho.
Man, you and Duke can reference the shit out of that, but I saw like 2 episodes on cable.
Really?
15 years ago. Yeah, really. I don't.
It's like $13 on Amazon.
Yeah.
What?
The whole first season of Jericho.
The only season of Jericho?
No, there's 2 seasons.
The second one didn't work as shit, though, right?
The second
it's
season
like 2 or 3 episodes.
It's like Ravenwood. It's like 6 episodes, and then they abruptly halted it. Yeah. The government shut it down.
Allegedly.
Or they just ran out of monies.
I'm a little less than 2 months. I would say more closer to 2 weeks. That I'm convinced,
I was trying to be generous.
That I'm convinced that like it's not coming back anytime soon. Like 2 weeks for me.
Okay.
You're probably more in line. I just
trying not to sound like a werewolf prepper, but there's a I think there's a fine line. There's a fine line with
thief, but I don't want to regret not acting.
Right.
There's a fine line between being like a planned werewolf prepper and shit has hit the fan, and there's a difference between scavenging and being a werewolf prepper.
So the guy I sold my dagger to, he's friends with a guy who has an old deuce and a half with a belt fed. Okay. And his dad has like a Jeep with some sort of, I don't know if it's belt fed, box fed, whatever on it. And these guys are like kind of like the Las Vegas people where you pay to come shoot their full auto crap. That's kind of like their thing. And this guy said that he was part of this guy's group. Okay, well, it's within driving distance of bug out location 1 for me. What happens if those guys don't want to play nice? And they know, and obviously I didn't say anything or whatever, but I was like, man, I'd like to come shoot with you guys and hang out. That never happened, which is unfortunate because it could have been a good branch into some good people, especially me being, the farmer side that has a field of cows next to me and blah, 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 blah. You don't think people like that are going to want food? They are. So if you know where they are, if you're in that situation, obviously the other situation is much more, I don't know where I'm going with this. It's covert because it's all like supplies and stuff in a garage where you can see a field of cows, right? So if you go for that and these people just start going the week 1 and grabbing these resource caches instead of going to the Walmarts and the Walmart warehouses like everybody else, you know what I mean? They're not hitting all the grocery stores and stuff. They're going to hit these little spots. That could be an issue. Those people aren't going to wait for 2 weeks or 2 months like we've graciously said here. So just like I said, there's the bad actors that Like, there's the good people that go into houses and are respectful, and there's the people that are making lists and saying, hey, I want like a shopping list. You know what I mean?
Whether it's forever or not, whatever the scenario is, definitely by day 3 of like no community, not community, no communication from authority and denial of services, i.e., electricity, refrigeration, air conditioning, TV, like it would be on and popping. Like people would be going nuts.
Right.
What's
I
the
don't know
saying?
what.
Most people are 3 missed meals away from anarchy or something like that.
9.
Yeah.
9 missed meals.
That's 3 days no food. That mom with the starving kiddo, she's going to take that kitchen knife and do what she's got to do, you know?
I mean, that's even like understandable. It's just everybody, that human condition.
Yep. It's the folds of civilization that we prepped ourselves up, we propped ourselves up on, like I was talking about with the migrants earlier. I don't think they'll wait for the 9 missed meals. They're going to go take before then because they've been in that situation where they're from. They'll probably see the signs before we do, and they'll start stealing. I'd say when you see that, it's probably your indicator that law enforcement's not too far away from not showing up the next day.
Well, if it's affecting everywhere, then yeah, I mean, nobody, by 3 days, it all falls apart. Because your police department doesn't have like food rations at the PD. Like, they're not getting immediate pay for showing up.
Right. There'll be the 1 or 2 good Samaritans that, above all, and they might not have families, but everybody with families isn't going to leave their family in that situation. They're going to stay home. I would. The next issue is if it's that bad and the power's out, they don't have communications to coordinate, and there's only so many police, and they really need that to actually handle a situation, active shooter otherwise, right? Or maybe they're like, hey, we're going to protect the banks in the grocery store. Okay, cool. Set up 12 guys at each one. They're like, we only have 20 guys on the whole police force. Problem. And that's including like the desk jockey. That's including the secretary. Like,
and you know all those
I don't
guys are
think
going to
anybody
show
would
up for
care
work.
about the bank by 3
Yeah,
days.
like,
yeah, I wouldn't.
There's.
People-
I mean,
people aren't
the
gonna go
paper
to
money
work.
that. No individual branch or bank has enough paper money in anymore that in a scenario like this book that anybody would give a shit about a bank. It's just a building. It's a figurehead of an institution. And all of our money is so fractional.
Just
you know,
an
it's
example
ones
for
and zeros on a
okay.
computer.
The local government building.
I wonder if you could even open a vault. Like if you were the bank manager, like could you even open a vault when there's no electricity?
Yeah. I've been in one.
I'm sure there's a way, but I bet it takes more than one person. And again, none of the banks have enough cash in them at any one time anymore. That's why you can't go make large withdrawals.
I'm who gives a shit about the green toilet paper? I want like a safe.
He
I
wants
want
the
I want the stuff in the vault. Yeah, I want
wants
all
the vault
the
for the
jewelry and
building.
shit.
I mean, that's old people stuff. I don't think anybody under 60 has got anything you can eat or
I
use
think
to
he
get
just wants-
stuff to eat.
I think he just wants the bulletproof vault itself. Like,
Yeah, I just want the vault.
I
You
understand.
want
But like,
to live in the vault?
you talk about not wanting them
It's gonna be
at
hot.
your driveway.
It would be hot.
Like,
It'll be
talk about not
super
wanting
hot.
them at your driveway. They're literally at your door. Just, I mean,
Yeah.
you either be in it or you be out of it, but you can't get the benefit from it out of it.
I don't know how to say your name, 8648, but yes, grow. And I've had fantastic years of garden, and our gardens suck really bad this year. It's just been, we've had hail, it's been really hot, then we get a lot of water. The plants just don't know what the hell's happening. It's been my absolute worst year gardening. I've gardened 5 years at my property, and I put up 1,000 jars last year, and it ain't looking too hot this year.
I've been hearing people whispering about the weather patterns changing. Like some flow in the ocean is moving, and it affects like everything. I'm wondering if the grow zones are going to need to change.
The seasons have definitely felt like they've changed about the last 5 or 6 years here. I mean, I remember freezing, sleeping in a tent with 4 foot of snow in the middle of November, to I've been hunting in a t-shirt in December. When I'm black powder hunting with a hoodie in the middle of December, kind of weird. Maybe there's something to that.
Things are changing.
That's
That's
could
why you
be
gotta keep
like
practicing.
the calendar that we use is imperfect. Like it loses, over like several hundred years. I think the seasons would like flip.
Old Man Buntwrinkle's got it. Pharmacies would probably be protected. You're probably right.
For a day or two, that's what I'm saying, though. You keep forgetting that this is not the difference. And I saw his comment, and I don't disagree. But the difference is that was a affected locale with a not affected entire nation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
The
people
scenario-
are
the
people are
scenario
plain
in
and
this
simple
book-
not going to go to work.
They're not. They're not going to go to work.
I
They're gonna
wouldn't.
go home.
If I was in Locopedia or whatever like that, I'd be like, "Fuck you guys."
If they're not doing something that immediately accesses them food and resources, they're not going to be doing it. And for the first 2 or 3 days, everybody's just going to go home and live off the peanut butter and bread they've got at home. That
Or
2 or
they're
3
going to
days
go
worth
to
of
their job
groceries.
and loot it.
Yeah, or that. But it again depends on the person, depends on the reality of the situation, and that there's no coming back. Because initially, society runs deep in all of us. It's just like driving down the road. Most people follow the traffic laws to the best of their ability. And we don't realize that it's just paint, like it's an imaginary boundary. It's a societally ingrained thing.
Like sitting
And
through
that's what-
2 hours of traffic, and there's like 2 shoulders that you could be using,
Yeah.
but we don't because there's paint there. Ooh, can't cross that line. Might be a
Right.
cop up there. You might get in trouble.
Or the people that sit and gawk in a drive-through line while there's a guy obviously shooting at people, and they just sit in the drive-through line and watch it happen and wait till they get shot in the face. That didn't happen 2 weeks ago.
I think I told you guys when my wife was still the grocery manager or the produce manager at the store, local store. Our plan was she had keys to the building. Our plan was if I figured something was going down, we were going to go try and clear that place out.
But
I
Katrina was
blame you.
an affected locale where the rest of the nation wasn't. So like there was somewhere to send resources, there was somewhere to bring outside help. It's the same with your cops. Your cops that live in your area aren't going to show up to work after a day or 2 or 3. Once they realize that there's not going to be a paycheck on Friday, and the police department doesn't have a vault of food to send them home with, they have no reason to show up anymore, except for if they think the badge curries them some favor in some way.
Right.
They're just going to keep their uniform. They're not going to.
And as that
I would do what
society
Rick did,
dissolves and
and
there's no respect for authority anymore, that position won't matter. That badge means nothing.
right, Rick, all the cops cleaned out the cage. He came in for the scraps of some old school, bolt actions and some shotties, and 700 rounds. All the cops are going to go take what they think they need to help their families survive.
Well, my cousin told me when he was on patrol, those guys had an understanding. Like if backup was more than 2 hours away, or I can't remember, maybe it was an hour. Like if you couldn't get backup within an hour, during like a disaster of some sort, it was, they said, we're all done. We're just going to go home.
Yep.
They had that understanding amongst each other. Like it wasn't a company, wasn't a policy or anything like that. That was just something that they had all discussed. And I'm sure a lot of places are like that. But
Grocery stores, gas stations, yeah, they're not going to show back up. Why would you want to put yourself in danger over shit that's not yours? Especially, you know, like a gas station attendant. Like, they're not going to get a knife or a gun pulled on them for gas. They don't care. Why would you put yourself in that possible scenario?
You can't get the gas out of the ground anyway, idiot.
I mean, I don't know. If you inherited a nice enough gas station, like convenience store, you might continue to occupy that structure.
Yeah, it might.
Yeah, but that's a very
town.
desirable location, though. I would take what I want out of it and go somewhere else. But every Tom, Dick, and Harry is gonna want to go to fucking go see what's in the gas station down the road. Like you're gonna be fucking constantly barraged. Like I would take what I need and go to you know, secure location 1 or 2.
I'd like to get a pharmacist in here and have him be 100% honest and say, hey, what would you do in the scenario? Would you take stuff that you think you needed and bail?
Here's
Like,
the problem.
You're
not going to get somebody that can prove to you that they're a pharmacist.
No.
And simultaneously give you any sort of medical advice. No. Or dare on microphone say that they would steal stuff. They're just not.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get anybody like that.
But if you could get that honest, like, from like 4 of them across the U.S., like, honestly, what would they do? Like, they've talked about it, just like the cops talk about it, just like we talk about it. Like, oh, hey, I work at Walmart. But when shit goes down, I'm going to hit up the outdoor section, grab all the freeze-dried food, and I'm going to load up the shotgun. I'm going to go load a whole pallet of crap in the back of my truck and go. Like, everybody's talked about it, you know?
I know.
You work at a gun store, you're like, yeah, we're either going to hold it out or we're going to load it up so it's not used against, you know, good people.
Everyone's had the talks in their fields.
Yep. The electricians have all talked about, hey,
take my last paychecks worth
It's a special day.
I take my last paychecks worth of stuff and peace out. Good luck to you.
All right. We've been going for a little over 2 hours. It's almost midnight. Let's get closing thoughts through everybody here. Sorry.
Drink water, move more, eat less, kiss your loved ones.
Be able to carry a lot of shit.
Kiddos,
308 doesn't work at 1,000 yards.
It probably does, but you probably don't.
Nah, 308 peters off about 850. I mean, once it goes transonic, you're at the mercy of your environmental variables, wind and humidity and so on and so forth. Plus, its shockwave catches up to it and destabilizes it.
All right. 308 does not go 1,000 yards. All right. Goodbye, everybody. We love you.
It goes 1,000 yards. You just